Welcome, everyone, to Nightcap, candid conversations with friends and colleagues and wonderful people such as I have here. This, my friends, is Logan Dean at L_Dean on Twitter. Logan, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Logan and I have talked on Twitter and in DMs a couple of times. Mostly it's screaming about a very cool game that Logan has created called The Company, which you can see behind Logan. I also have it right here. Yeah. This little game, this is a tabletop RPG game, is so cool. I could talk about this for a very long time. I've run one game of The Company last year, and it was so incredibly fun. But before we talk about The Company itself, well, actually, no, I lied. Before we do anything else, I'm going to show you this book, mostly because the entire book, you can run this entire game. You know how many rule pages there are? 7. There are 7 pages of rules, and they are tiny. They're very small. So it's very good, very accessible, super easy to learn, super easy to play. This whole thing is this is the one shot that I ran that turned into a 2-shot because they picked around it every single thing. It's very good. And also, there's more coming out, is there not? The Red Book.
Oh yeah. These are like hot off the press. I made these this weekend. It's huge. It's 52 pages. So it's the opposite of the other books.
That's it's more than both of these combined.
It's a big book. It's got new rules. We got a new class, the executive, and then 6 entire missions that I got my friends to write. Like Gannon Reedy, who is the GM on the Neoscum podcast, my buddy Finn, who's a brilliant game designer, my good friend Jen Ducharme, who's just a hilarious person. We got some real talent in here. I'm really excited about it.
I'm so excited. So what, in your own words, what is The Company? What is this game that I've just exploded my love all over?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, for me, it's like it was a catch-all for my thoughts. Like I was working a terrible corporate job and I had been there for a decade, and it was just a place to like dump all of these like aggressions into. But I mean, it's a role-playing game first and foremost. Like it's a game you can play with people and tell stories with. But it's also like it's a satirical like skew of capitalism and corporations. I actually got the entire idea for the game watching Chernobyl. So like watching that miniseries and watching like how they dealt with it, I was like, oh, this would be a cool mini RPG. And then the adventure in it was a mothership module I wrote. So like I play tested that at Gen Con 2018 and 2019, running it as Mothership. And then in 2019, I met Alex Mitchell, who's the artist on the book at Gen Con. He played the game and one of my events. And we really hit it off. And then we figured out how to kind of spin it into its own thing. And I wrote it. Alex drew all of it. And then we kickstarted it in 2020. I have a hard time saying the numbers. Mm-hmm. And with Zine Quest 2, and it did really well. We did I think I had like 500-600 backers on that, which was pretty cool. And then we did the conflict resolution guidelines, which is the upcoming expansion for Zine Quest 3 this year. And that one had less people, but I make them all by hand, so honestly, less
for your hand's sake. It was okay.
Yeah, less books is actually not too bad. Like I'm planning on cranking out the rest of them this weekend and sending them out to backers in the next week or so, which I'm really excited about because I'm a little behind schedule, but I burned out a little bit and I needed a break.
Creatives burning out in this year of our chaos 2021. No way.
The game it's survival horror, so it's a love letter to stuff like Resident Evil and Jurassic Park. And honestly, like I grew up reading Michael Crichton and Stephen King, so those are always going to be two of my biggest influences.
Amazing.
And this one is way more Crichton than King. But
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, Crichton writes these, like he wrote Jurassic Park and Lost World and like Timeline and Prey. Prey was a big influence. Like just these critiques on tech and capitalism and how they're actually not that great, and like how they will go beyond what's morally acceptable and into morally reprehensible territory in the effort of making money. And like the guy, he died almost 20 years ago now, and I think his work is still some of the most like prescient stuff that's ever been written in science fiction. Like he's up there with like William Gibson for me, like just calling it like every step of the way. It's really interesting. So it's a lot of that. And then I went to art school, so like it was kind of a catch-all for a bunch of the design garbage I picked up there. The books have like a weird design philosophy to them that's personal. Like it's all brutalist, it's all like angular and square. In the employee book, it's all very structured, but in the management book, it's a little more rounded and nebulous. There's more leeway. It's really subtle, but if you look at them side by side, they have different kind of feels to them, and that's on purpose.
There's like a more openness as far as like how things are structured in the manager thing, whereas opposed to like the employee handbook, it's like very what is it called, sterile and like stagnant, and like you've got like the last like 2/3 of it is literally just playbooks and that's it.
Yeah.
Or like you can take notes. Look at that beautiful note page I'll never use because it's perfect and blank.
That's my love letter to old video game manuals.
Oh my God, yes.
Like that's all on purpose. The font we use is Swedish Sans, which is
God, I love it.
It's a font that was commissioned by the Swedish government for all of their forms.
Oh my God.
So it's a free open source font you can use, but I think it's just got it's got that form feel, it feels like you'd be on a form. And like, I went through a ton of fonts.
On a typewriter.
It's amazing. Yeah. I went through a lot of fonts for the game, and that one, I just kept coming back to that one. And I'm a sucker for like a good typeface, and I like design. I really fell in love with design working on these books. And I think it shows. I got real into it. I had the entire first book designed and laid out before I even launched the Kickstarter. So it was real fun. And then the new books all take the same design philosophy. So I was able to use like the same templates and stuff, which saved a lot of time.
That is very good. They're also a great size because, like, I'll use
they're handbooks.
I'll use one that happens to be here, which is Mothership, right here. This is the size. They're like, it's not just, I don't have humongous hands. This is just a very like compact little pocket-sized travel. Like, these are very easy to take with you, and because it is a simple system, it's very easy to literally just take this, like this. I could see this being, when conventions are things that are safe to go to, again, reliably, this right here, super easy convention game. This is all you need. Like, the management manual is very good because it has like an overview literally on the back of the front cover of like, here's how you resolve conflicts and stuff. And I'm sure with the conflict resolution book, it's the same thing, sort of thing. But this is all you really need.
Yeah, and I mean, it's 100 pounds like cover stock, like chipboard recycled from French paper. Like, that's meant to be thrown around. Like, that's 80 pounds. What is it? 68? No, those books have 80 pound butcher paper in them. Like, they're meant to get worked. Like, those are for you to play. I have a Mothership behind me too, and like on my shelf, and my Mothership is just beat. Because I use it, like it hits the table. I have another copy that's in like plastic. But I have
but do not touch copy.
Yeah, I did that with all their main releases because I love them so much, and they're just, and with the new version coming out, like those are all going to get updated and changed. So I'm like, oh, I'm glad I bought those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like with zines and stuff, they hit the table for me. So I wanted to make something that like you wouldn't feel guilty about banging up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just had the idea of taking like the employee handbook, like getting another one, but the one that I get is just for not literally ripping apart, but essentially with a character in mind who is like a defector of the company who has the employee handbook and is like making notes in it and like scratching things out and adding pages and like post-it notes and writing all over like the covers and everything. That's a project that I would love to do.
That's awesome. We have some interesting stuff in the jam coming up that might interest you in that front. And there's a little rules blurb in the CRGs about leaving the company and becoming independent contractors, because a lot of players brought that up. Because the titular company, it's not great to work for, and it leads to some morally like conflicting situations that players aren't comfortable with, and like that's good. Like it should be raising questions. I find that art is best when it makes you ask questions. And as an artist and a writer, I would be doing myself a disservice if I wasn't like asking people to look inwardly and ask themselves questions about stuff with the work. So it's always fun when people are like, well, this company kind of sucks. I'm like, yeah, they're terrible. What are you going to do about it? Like,
you're accurate. Have you seen the company Twitter, which we will get back to? But like, if you just stop on that page for 2 seconds, you'll realize, something is amiss here.
It's fun. And it's a good way. I think it's a fun, light way to engage with the state of the world. And hyper capitalism, mega corporations running things. Like we live in a cyberpunk world. It's just not raining all the time. Yeah. And
it's not as neon as we thought it would be. It's not as cool as we considered it to be.
But it's exactly the same. And you know, by presenting it as a game, I was able to kind of circumvent writing it as a book, which was another option. And like I've been working on developing Eurydice into something else too, just because the story is really solid there.
It's very good. It's a very good story.
So like it's a fun way to kind of engage with these topics with a group without having an intense conversation.
Right.
And like it's great when people ask me questions about it, and when they were like, well, is the company evil? I'm like, absolutely, 100%. Like there's no question about it. But like the real question becomes, can you be evil if you're not a person? Like if you don't have, if you're just an entity, like can you be, is good and evil a thing? And so like it gets into like philosophical questions, like you know, you start talking about like Kant and like other like moral imperative thinkers that are like, what do we owe each other? Like what are morals? What are values? And like I have never gotten into these conversations during a game, because that would be wrong.
That's less, I mean, if it's like consensual with every player like going into it, I feel like it could be an interesting dive into those sorts of things. But like just kind of coming out of the gate of like, all right, everyone, here's the topic of the day, let's go.
You're right. And at the end of the day, I want people to have fun.
Exactly.
I come from an organized play background. I used to run games for a bunch of companies. So like when I was designing the game, the main focus was how fast can someone get to playing it.
Amazing.
And you can get to play in the game in 10 minutes because the rules are, there's no math. It's all dice pools. It's one die, D10s. And then it's just, you roll as many dice as you have ticks on your sheet. So like, and then you're trying to hit an 8, 9, or 10. And that's it.
Easy.
I mean, the combat's a little weird now that I've run it a few times, but you know, the game isn't meant, it's not a combat simulator. It's not Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like there are points where you should run away, you should dodge and leave, you should not engage, because your characters aren't meant to survive that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And coming from Mothership, which is an amazing game, and with the bones in Call of Cthulhu, like I wanted to move away from some of the more, like I wanted to get rid of sanity as a thing, because I always hate sanity as a mechanic. I think it's insensitive. And so like, stress and burnout work because of the theme. They work really
because that I think is one of the biggest things that stuck out to me, was like, again, and it was this, it's everything from the writing in the handbooks to the scenarios to the capital C company as a whole. It's this little like satirical poke of like, hey, you just keep working, you just keep your nose to the grindstone there, you just keep your head in your work, don't stress about it, and it'll be fine. Meanwhile, like in the Eurydice one shot, you got like these really bad things happening. Just don't just just keep that stress down and you'll be fine. Just think about the work. You'll be fine.
and those are like direct, that stuff happened to me. It happens to people every day. Like look at everybody on a picket line right now, like yelling about like how they're being treated at their jobs. And like this isn't fiction. Like this is real. People are literally dying on their jobs and these companies don't care. And like the hardest thing about writing this stuff is like trying to come up with things that are outlandish.
Yeah.
Because the real world is wild. I was working on I wanted to do a one shot about a team that had to take down like a semi truck full of data. Like it was a rival company and they had to like hijack this data. And I found out Amazon has a semi truck with armed guards full of servers that they use to move data around the country. It's called the Snowmobile.
Oh my God. Whoa.
And I was like, well, this is real. Like there's no fun in it not being like, because now it's real. I think in the one shot they were transporting like an alien carcass or something, but like still it's like that's a real thing. Or like you read about like Coca-Cola in the 90s was hiring like guerrilla death squads to kill union leaders in South America. And like,
oh my God.
Yeah, like so yeah, I do a lot of research.
Yeah.
And it kind of is terrible because I'm learning all these things and I'm like, oh, the world is a bad place, but I already knew that. Like,
right.
It's interesting, it's fun, it's weird. It gets people to engage and it gets people thinking.
Yeah.
Because we should be questioning these companies and we should be looking at them with a critical lens because they aren't expecting us to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the idea of like, anybody who's worked in a service industry or retail or even like an office job that's, perhaps management or lower, I'll say, because that's the experience that I've had, is for most of those places, you literally feel like a cog in a larger machine. You're just one little dot on the, megapixeled spreadsheet image that is this corporation that exists.
And you're expendable.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're just like this little tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. You've got to work hard, and if you don't work hard, well, we'll find someone who works harder than you.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with working hard, because I do think hard work pays off, and I think like eventually if you work hard, you do get what you want, which is contentment. Like, and that's what people should work towards. I feel like something that makes them feel like they've achieved something. That's important. I think that's really important. It's unfortunate that like in our culture, in our society, we place that contentment on money, and like that becomes the goal, and we start to lose sight about like things that make us happy in the pursuit of money. And like and we can get into a larger like deep philosophical like conversation about economics and debt and like how these things work, but like at the end of the day, money's not worth it. It's not worth your life. But
in the larger realm.
but
It is just money.
it is just money. And like it's hard to like even just saying that personally, like right now, and
Hmm.
saying it's just money. And even my mind's like, yeah, but
Yeah,
like
but yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep.
and it's we're just fundamentally broken in that way.
Hmm.
Just as a society.
Hmm.
And it's not just Americans, it's the whole world.
Yeah.
Because like that's capitalism took over and it just
Hmm.
kind of like kept going. And we just let it. Because what were we supposed to do? And now with globalization and watching this, I work in logistics, so watching the supply line break down, it's like, oh well, there we go. Like,
There it is. It's like karma caught up at some point.
and then there's just these band-aids being put on to fix it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
Well,
Biden
because
administration.
nothing's wrong. Why would we fix it if nothing is wrong?
I,
Right?
I think something a fundamental problem I have, and like we can 100% switch gears in a second because this is going to get weird. Is like the idea that it's not the government's responsibility,
Mm,
like to help people and to like help people. Honestly,
mhm,
to help people, like because it is the government's responsibility to help people. That's what we have a
mhm.
government for. And like watching the Biden administration just throw unemployed people under a bus, throw like let eviction moratoriums lapse, like they're putting band-aids on the supply chain by like keeping the ports open 24 hours. Like these things are, or like giving private sector companies free reign to do whatever they want. Like that's a Caesar situation. You give these companies that power, they're not going to get it back. Like what do you
Yeah.
think is going to happen?
Yeah.
And so like this is the type of stuff that drives me to tweet as a satirical mega corporation and be like, yeah, this is a good idea. Like
This is great.
which is the Twitter is the company Twitter account has become a weird refuge for my rants.
Yeah. It's become an entity unto itself. It's become multiple entities
Oh yeah, the
at
Sbarro
this
account.
point. To switch to that, the the Twitter, I found the Twitter first, and then I found the game that goes along with the Twitter. And I I had no idea what I was looking at first, because a lot, like all of the tweet the tweets are so
Unhinged.
wonderfully unhinged in like the best way. It's like I mean, it's like mega-corp stuff. So like recently you retweeted something from Amazon with like the working town sort of things of like, this is a great idea. Now it's not, and that's the point. But stuff like that, and then tweets about, just stuff being redacted, and talking about various things, and then a quote tweet later saying disregard everything you just heard. That sort of stuff is so wonderful. And it, you this spooky season you branched off and added a Sbarro into the company's lounge. Like the pizza place. If you're not familiar with Sbarro's, it's a pizza joint in at least the continental US.
It's like a mall pizza place.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's not great, but it's not terrible pizza.
It's
But
mall,
I'm
it's serviceable mall quality food.
yeah, but I watching those two Twitter accounts interact, because I know they're both you, is very, very funny. It's so funny. In that kind of like that kind of witty, dark, satirical humor horror that is kind of like its own little pocket of like the whole horror spectrum. Because I could definitely see like scenarios run in the company that are less horror centric, like, like Aliens, or, closer to Mothership, and are more like paranoia, which is another touchstone that I feel like I have a friend group that I play with, and we now have a couple of canonical universes based on the games that we've run and played. And the universe that we have right now consists of the company, Mothership, Teens in Space, and Paranoia. All four of those exist at the same time in the same universe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
um,
I
So
mean,
like,
the titular company WB Wuhan Baxter exists in my mothership game, so
yeah.
like that makes sense. Like,
Yeah. And at the time of recording, I'm about ready to run a mothership game where they are working for the company. And it's not gonna be good. It's not a good time for them.
it never
But
ends up good.
yeah, yeah. But it's reading just reading the Twitter. If y'all never play this game, if you just follow at the company, or it's company RPG, right?
It's the company RPG, yeah.
The company RPG. Um, just at least follow that because it is a very good time. It's at the very least it inspirational fodder for like short stories or your own TTRPG stuff. If you do like a modern day setting of any it doesn't not even a modern day, like you could do sci-fi, you could do like set it in the 70s, you know, or you could go like all the way back. You could go to like the 30s, you could go like Great Depression era. That would be interesting.
I mean, I
Have like an
think
oldie
in
goldie.
lore we have a company history going back 400 years.
I can
So
pull up the timeline. I have it right here. Oh,
my
yep.
my timeline goes back a little further.
The time,
Um,
according to the manager's manual, at the very least, 1676 is where it kind of
that's
starts.
when Baxter like disappears and like
Yeah,
shows up again.
yeah.
And like all of that stuff is okay. So the Twitter account is one of my favorite things because it's a place for me to vent a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. Because not a day goes by that some corporation doesn't pull some shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I just yell about it on my Twitter account, nobody cares. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or this guy's just mad, and it's like, yeah, I'm mad all the time, whatever. But if I make it in the voice, then people kind of like pay a little more attention. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's fun to poke fun at like Bezos and yell about Chris and Cinema and like, I it's a good place for me to vent. And like everything that happens on the account is canon. In like the current like the blood computer takeover this summer.
Oh my god,
Um,
so
I I'm
good.
writing it as that's my contribution for the jam is like the
Oh,
blood
good.
computer. I'm adding it as a playable variable because I've been teasing the blood computer forever, and I
For a
did.
very long time, yeah.
So it's such a weird concept. It was like it's like this computer they figured out how to optimize like fulfillment centers for Cliffside Logistics, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And so like and it just became alive by accidentally eating a person. And so like and now it just runs on blood. And so
Incredible.
and they shut it down, but it exists in the network.
Yeah,
So it just pops up every now and then. So
yeah.
I'm writing that as like we have a jam going on to celebrate the conflict resolution guideline release. It's going all October. Um, anything variable, like even just monsters, like whatever you want. And like it's also to introduce our third party publishing license. Because I want people to be able to make stuff in the world without like asking me for
Mm-hmm.
permission. And I want people to be able to make money off of it because like
Mm-hmm.
that's important. And I think indie design, that's how you start. You
Yeah.
start making stuff for somebody else's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make your own stuff. That's how I started. So I want to give people the tools to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the like doing the Twitter, running these little like side memos or these odd little gags. It's just a fun way to keep honestly to keep myself interested.
Mm-hmm.
And to just play with the lore. Because there's something we're making something bigger, I feel like.
Yeah,
Um
it's definitely moved, I think, from like a one office building company, kind of idea to you and like the community at large have started to craft a literal like universe almost with like all these little tiny things that like offhand things that you post on the company and somebody just takes it and runs with it and then reintroduces it as like something else and deciding what things that the community accepts as canon, what things are like legitimately canon or some things like things in that nature. It's in my head, at least as a fan of it, is massive. It's huge.
well, thank you. That means a lot. It's growing. and I like the speed at which it's growing because I can keep up. And like it's kind of slow, but like I like slow.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like keep control over it or anything, but it is nice to kind of have a handle on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
It is interesting to watch it get large enough to tell these larger stories and to hear like people's campaigns and stuff.
Yeah.
And to encourage people to like write that stuff down and publish it.
Mhm.
Because like people will DM me and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. I think it's really cool. It's fun. And I was like, you should write that,
Mhm.
make that thing. Like my friend David saw I have this weird lore about the company CEO. She's just been missing for like half a decade. And it's just a seed that I like have. And David's like, I want to write this. I was like, go for it. Like, please.
do,
Like
yeah.
saves me from having to write it. And like, because I love writing. I hate writing.
The two dichotomies of a writer.
Yeah. And so like the best thing in the world is have written.
Yes.
The worst thing in the world is having to write.
Yes.
Like the threat, the like the unfounded threat of the blank page, like it's offending me.
Yep. Yep.
Whatever. But like watching people interact with that, watching it, and just embracing the satirical voice.
Mhm.
Earlier, I think late last year, I really kind of leaned into it just being a voice of satire, and it's been really great for me. It's been really therapeutic for me, because I can just be like, oh yeah, we own 17 U.S. senators now, whatever. Or like today's,
that was a very good one.
I'm proud of that one. Today's was like just kind of stay out of low Earth orbit for a little bit, because Shatner went up. I was like, they're gonna kill him up there,
Yeah.
or like they took somebody up there for him to kill.
Why not
And like
both?
we've been teasing something in like space for so long, and so many people have like seeded it. I'm like, I'm not even gonna touch it. There's like, I'm gonna do the blood computer. I'm gonna flesh out Teller a little bit, and then I have the mega dungeon that I want to write, which is the pyramid facility, the 60s mega dungeon. So, which I'm just like, that's going to take years. Like, I'm not even going to touch it for a while. And I want to do it the same way we did the CRGs, except I want to assign writers to sections and then work them together with me and Alex, and like really like make something cool out of it instead of something slapped together by me over the course of 3 frenzied months, while I'm also like working my job and like trying to maintain relationships and not die.
It's like the Venn diagram. It's like the you can only choose two, and it's one of them is
One's
work.
gotta go. Yeah.
One's gotta go. It's work, and it's other work, and it's everything else in your life. Which one do you? How do you? I have 2 hands, but 3 things to hold.
Absolutely. And like I said, I do the whole thing. Like I design it, I write most of it. I do the layout. I hired editors.
That's
Don't
good.
worry. I hired
That's
editors.
good.
I hired editors, but then I make them. Like I physically make the books. Like I print them on my brother printer over here.
These books touched by Logan Dean right here.
I however you want to take that. I touched all of the books. And then like I bought a paper cutter. I have a big stapler. Like I make them. And then I wrapped all of those bands. I did all of those by hand. Like there's 5 glue stick wipes, and then like wrapped up, and then I press them. Like I did all that. So like I like making them. I enjoy
it's almost kind of like ritualistic, I assume, at some point on the like, of the however many hundreds of backers, at least of the initial run, after like the first 100 or so. I'm sure it was either great or terrible. Or
those
both.
books I did in batches and phases. So I did all the employee handbooks, and then I did all the management manuals, and then I wrapped them all up.
Okay.
And then there was a whole day of just stuff in envelopes. And there's 2 books. So like 550 backers, 2 books, that's 1,100 books.
It's a lot of staples.
So I have 170, 177 physical book backers on this one. And it's 1 book. So I have to make 177 books. I was like, yes, thank you. I could do 177 books. I could do 177 books. And like, and I've made 6 proofs. That one's the first perfect proof. So like this weekend is I'm doing bands tomorrow, and then this weekend is just making books. And then
Wow,
I'm
it's amazing.
taking a small break next week, and hopefully I want to get them out next week, but I mean that's maybe a tall order. But end of the month, my goal is to have, for most people, to have them by Halloween.
Spooky, a spooky surprise. That's
Yeah.
a dream. An
I mean,
absolute wonderful dream.
I'm a little behind schedule, but
I mean, it is what it
who
is.
who isn't, right?
That's the big thing. And I think like especially for a lot of independent creators, big companies too to an extent, like big creators to an extent as well. Um
I mean,
but
I
mostly
work for a
like
big game company. Like
yeah,
we're behind on a bunch of stuff. So
yeah. But to narrow the focus to like the independent creator who's literally doing everything like on their own, with their own time, their own resources, and everything like that, 2 of which we're sitting on this call right now, it is hard. It's very hard. And you try to stick to a schedule. You try to, stick to these deadlines and these things that you're telling, especially if somebody's expecting something at a general time. And because it's one or, maybe a handful of people who are working on whatever it happens to be, if one thing goes awry, the whole it's just you. Like if you get ill for any reason, or if you have an emergency come up and you have to like be gone for a small amount of time, that I mean, you can't time once it's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back.
you're right.
So, it's having a little bit of slack, a little bit of forgiveness, especially for independent creators when, life does happen. Now, if
And
it's like 4 to 8 years late,
I've got a couple of Kickstarters like that I backed.
it's a little harder. It's a little harder to give a little grace to that. But, that's
Right now it's I'm cutting everybody a bunch of slack because of everything going on. Like
Yeah.
The supply lines breaking down, you can't ship anything. Like
Yeah.
And I tend to keep my projects pretty low stakes, like if it's anything I can't handle, I don't do it.
Right.
And that's just a personal thing because I don't want to not deliver.
Right.
I don't do stretch goals on Kickstarters because I think it slows stuff down, like stuff like that. And like I was right to not do that stuff. Like I'm ahead of the game now. I'm a behind schedule, but weirdly ahead of the game. So like, we're okay. It's like I stopped backing board games a long time ago. Because I noticed that they were constantly delayed because they kept adding and adding and adding stuff. And at some point I piles of cardboard in the back of my house, the games I don't play. It's like, okay, so I'm going to wait 2 years for this so it can maybe hit the table one time and I spent $200 on it. I'm okay. Like I'd rather buy $200 worth of zines from people like putting their hearts into them than like one game from a giant corporation that didn't want to spend the money on printing it themselves. Like, I don't know. I love indie RPGs so much. I love Mothership. I love Troika. I love the scene around it. I love what people are doing. I think it's amazing. It's wonderful. And like I love stuff like Zine Quest. I love itch.io. I'm enamored with it, and I'm excited to like be part of it. But I'm also just like super excited to see what people crank out because people are just cranking cool stuff out all the time. And
there's so much imagination in the human brain. And especially if you get people from all sorts of different walks of life and different, ways of interpreting things. Like someday I'm going to have to write it. I don't know if I'll ever have the time to, but I've been trying to find the perfect system to put an idea, and maybe the company is one of them because it would be really interesting to do. But I was inspired by the anime Psycho-Pass. My thought was if you took that, but instead of people going to hunt physically manifested creatures, people have to go into other people's psyches and confront their these things before they can manifest. And if they
Oh
happen to
man.
manifest, then what do you do after that? You know, they're like the pre-team, the one that the preventative team. And I want to call it the REM protocol, like REM, like REM sleep.
Yeah.
But
That sounds amazing.
yeah, the idea is there. I
Reminds me of The
just like,
Cell with Jennifer
yes.
Lopez,
Mm-hmm.
which is a
Um,
wild movie that I now need to rewatch. Because now I'm thinking about it, like the visuals in that movie are
yeah. Yeah, but that's an idea that's been rolling around in my head, waiting for like the perfect kind of place to put it. Because I considered like maybe I'll make my own system, but I've never made a system before, and I don't really have a drive to at the moment. Like maybe someday, but I'm
to be
looking for like
honest.
that good.
I
Don't.
wouldn't.
As one who's crafted a system of his very
Oh,
own.
I still find problems in the company system all the time. I'm like, whatever, they can figure it out. Like,
Well, it's taking the idea of like the Pirates of the Caribbean mantra of it's more of a guideline than actual rules. When I ran my two shot of the company, the combat, you mentioned the combat earlier. It's a little
it's a
hard.
little wonky.
It's a little wonky. And so I took it as like here's we're going to kind of we're just going to go with it. We're
It's
going to do
very
what's
kind.
narratively interesting.
I've noticed it's very kind, like to attackers.
Mm,
Like, but I didn't want to write a combat game. Like, I wanted
right.
to write an investigation horror game, and
Yeah.
the having the combat be hard really leans into the survival horror aspect of it.
Yeah,
Um,
like the idea that you're not Ripley from Aliens, who's like a super badass, crawling through vents with like giant laser weapons. You
exactly.
are who are you? You're Daniel from Stargate SG-1 season 1.
Absolutely. Or
He's
the
never held a
movie,
gun before.
like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
James Spader in the dark, and like, and you're just like, why did Kurt Russell leave me here?
yeah,
And like,
exactly.
I didn't want. There's one class that's good at combat, but like
Hmm.
barely. And in Eurydice, like they can't even fire their gun, or else the whole place goes up. So like, I
Yep.
really wanted to curb the idea that like you got to fight your way out. Although everyone tries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Like
yeah. Like of the
D&D
people.
broke everybody.
Yeah, I had a group of I had 5 players. Of those 5 players, I think 2 survived.
And that's what
Towards
happens.
the end. But they
And
went out in like it just amazing ways.
ev-
Like one of them had like an alien burst, like chest burster moment, and the other one was like fending off this creature while the entire place was going up in flames and was like, remember my story, and like disappeared under, all sorts of like collapsing things. So like they went out in a great way. But
it,
like the
the,
mortality rate was quite high.
the two things that I did not expect, um, that happen all the time, are people have the coolest deaths in the game. Like, I've played a couple of times and I've died in like extremely fun ways.
Hmm.
There's almost in Eurydice, there's almost always a standoff at some point.
Yeah.
Because I've run Eurydice like 25 times, so I've like seen it like so many different ways, and like it's so great. People die in a fun way. Like I like taking the fear of death in a role playing game away. Like I like taking the power away from your character dying, because I
Yeah.
think we put too much, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, we put too much emphasis on like these people need to live forever.
Yeah.
And like we get, not that it's not that like it's not okay to get attached to a character. Like
Yeah.
I've been playing the same character for like 6 years in a D&D game. I love
Hmm.
my character. If she died, I'd be devastated. But I think we need to take some of that power back
Yeah.
narratively.
Yeah.
So like
Absolutely.
making it so like, yeah, you're expendable, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah.
Mothership does a great job with that too.
Hmm.
And
And I think
then
in both instances, to piggyback off that just for a minute, in both Mothership and the company, it's very easy to make a new character.
yeah,
Like Mothership character creation is super simple. Like it's literally on the character sheet. Like here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
mhm.
go. 2 minutes and you have a brand new character.
And like with the company, like your class is already statted out for you if you use the
Hmm.
sheet in the book. So all you do is add a couple of ticks and then give them their equipment and their perk, and you're ready to go.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, the other thing that was an unexpected and that rules that I always talk about because I love it is the interpersonal conflicts that come up due to the job system. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the job system was a way for me to figure out how to give people essentially inspiration
Mm-hmm.
because there needed to be a way to add dice when you were unskilled that was like a bonus. But like watching people get into fights over trying to do their jobs like is amazing because it's that's real life. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's working a job. That's being like, well, I am supposed to do this thing and it's to me more important than what you're supposed to be doing. And watching people like have these interpersonal conflicts within like a team, oh, mwah, it's incredible. Like I never planned that. I never even thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened every time. And it
So good.
rules
Yeah.
because what you're doing is you're giving storytelling agency back to the players
Yes.
and you're making it so that they are telling their own stories. The GM lift on the game is so light.
It's
Like,
so incredible. I think I planned for maybe 2 hours before it because everything is written. Literally everything is here. The map is here. Everything is in this book. I just had to have like a little tiny blurb at the very beginning scenario of like they're in a meeting room with the manager and they get their briefing.
oh, you're nice. I throw them into the pod.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just
I
like,
was
you're
doing
getting,
it for a streamed game, so I was like, I
I'm
gotta give
like,
them something.
I'm like, you get briefed on the way down. Like, um,
Incredible.
I do the Bioshock opening where like the screen comes down and they're like, and it's just like, here's a PowerPoint on what you got to do. Like
Yeah.
you're already going down because
Yeah.
they're like, it's most of the time I run for people who don't play together, like
Right.
demos and stuff. So, working that into the game, like you're strangers who all worked with the same company and like you've
Mm-hmm.
never met each other before. And then I'll let them develop interpersonal relationships if they want.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't make it a crux of the game,
Yeah.
because you would be pulled from all over the place, from different departments, from different parts of the world if you had a certain skill set to just be thrown in a team. Like Arc Division is like that. So
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of weird stuff that just kind of worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some clunky crap too. Like the game's still technically an alpha, so like I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when people give me fixes, I'm very open to them. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a perfect system. There's no perfect system, right?
Right.
So what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? What are we going to do in the next iteration?
Mm-hmm.
Which I have no idea when the hell is that it's going to be, because like I said, system crap is no way.
Yeah.
I was trying to write, I have a game called Infernal Machines about vampires who drive cars that run on blood across like an endless night desert. And I've been trying to figure out a system for that for years.
Oh my God.
And I never did. And then like Spencer Campbell came up with the Lumen system for light. And I was like, and it's an action system. It's just all about action because it's Lumen is this system meant to emulate Destiny, like playing the video game Destiny, or like that's exactly what I needed. I was like, oh, I'll just use this because it's so much easier because you get to do action stuff. And that's what that game is. It's Speed Racer if you're vampires. Like it's Castlevania meets Speed Racer. So like,
oh my God, I need to play this game.
like, and it's still like very nebulous. Like it's all of the man, this I don't ever talk about this game. Because
Please
it's
talk
not
about
like,
it more. I need to hear more
all
about this
of the
game.
chapter heads are My Chemical Romance lyrics. And like
Stop.
yeah, it's weird because like I when I was a teen, I was in rock groups in Michigan. We got to play a show with Under Oath and My Chemical Romance one time, and like that was at the Flint Local 432 in Flint, Michigan, in like 2003. And like they were touring I Bring You My Bullets, Bring Me Your Love, and like I remember just being blown away by this group, and then Revenge came out. I got like obsessed. And then Black Parade came out. It was all over. But I love My Chemical Romance. I love Gerard Way. Like I'm a big fan of Umbrella Academy. I love all that stuff. But and I'd say probably like pretty big later in life influence on me is like Gerard Way, like the stuff he did with DC, like Young Animal and stuff. Like that was really cool. And it's exciting to see people still resonate with MCR
Mhm.
like because it was part of that emo movement
Yeah.
where a lot of stuff like just is bad.
Mhm.
But like it's really cool to see MCR kind of rise to the top and have like another generation of people be
It's
into it.
kind of yeah, it's kind of a revival right now with like the alt slash emo circle of like the late 90s early 2000s ish era is like if you've been on TikTok,
I haven't.
it's okay, well if you've been on a portion of TikTok that's very loud and large right now, it's like it's all these these youngins out there with their ticks and their talks with like modern music, so like new artists who sound like My Chemical Romance and Paramore and like all of these bands that are coming back into popularity, are coming back on the radio because there's this new trend, which is just it's the same old
I
trend.
mean, everything
It's
comes,
the
it
same
all
thing.
comes around again. It
Mm-hmm.
always does. It's exciting for me as a person
Mm-hmm.
who, like, 15 years ago was super into these bands and,
Mm-hmm.
like, because they're on tour again. And, like, I get to see, like, I love Rilo Kiley. I love Jenny Lewis. Like, I've been listening to Jenny Lewis, man, last 20 years. And so, like, my partner and I, we went to go see Harry Styles
Mm-hmm.
uh, a few weeks ago, and his opener is Jenny Lewis. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, what a
Mm-hmm.
choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've seen Jenny Lewis at the Ryman Theater in Nashville like 2 times. Like, she puts on an incredible show. And Harry Styles is incredible. I love Harry Styles. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what a performer, what an artist, what a voice
Mm-hmm.
for a generation. What a nice voice for a generation.
A
Like,
very nice one.
yeah, he's got a great voice, but he's also saying,
Like a literal good voice, like a
yeah, like he's like,
proclamation voice.
be nice to each other, accept
Yeah.
people for who they are, love who you want to love, be who you want to be. I'm like, hell yeah, I think the kids are going to be all right. Like,
I think most of the kids are going to be fine. I think they're
because,
going to be good.
and like, we were in the United Center in Chicago, and everybody was masked up, and everybody was vaccinated, and like, they were taking it so seriously. All of these kids were so serious about it.
You love to
And
see
like
it.
2 weeks later, I went to go see Leon Bridges at another theater, and that was mostly adults, and the adults didn't give a shit. Like, they were like, no mask, being wild. And I was like, this is the most uncomfortable I've been since the pandemic started. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is why I didn't want to go to these things. And so like
Mm-hmm.
we it was a fine show, but like I was very uncomfortable the whole time. I was like, the dichotomy between these two experiences,
Mm-hmm.
one that was massive and well controlled because these kids cared, and
Mm-hmm.
one that was smaller and like out of control because these adults just didn't, was
Mm-hmm.
stunning to me. Like, it was two different worlds, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now stuff is starting to kind of
It's
click
like
into
an
place.
actual visual representation of like a generational shift.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
because people my
super
age,
cool.
like, I'm in my mid 30s, and like a bunch of people my age are like, do I care? Do I want to save everything, or do
Do
I
I
like
have an
just want,
energy to care?
or do I just want to like keep existing until I don't? And
Mm-hmm.
like, it's odd. um
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I yell about everything as a fake corporation, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But it's really interesting to watch like the stuff that I was super into be kind of vindicated,
Mm-hmm.
dashboard confessional vindicated, by new, like, younger people listening to it. And I think My
Mm-hmm.
Chemical Romance is a big deal because like
Yeah.
they're,
I mean, it inspired you to write a game.
it inspired me to write an entire game, that I hope, like, that's another reason I'm trying to take a break from the company stuff. It's because like I have 2, 3,
You have a whiteboard of all
4,
sorts of intentions.
some games that I want to make. I'm also contributing to Slayer's Almanac coming up with, which is
Ooh.
exciting. I wrote a haunted subway system.
I was
It's
hoping
called,
that you were just going to stop at Subway and it was just like an eat fresh situation, but like in
no,
a
it's,
bad way.
I don't know if you're familiar with Slayers at all. Spencer Campbell, he wrote this game called Slayers, and it's like this D&D killer that's just like super simple, but it takes place in this city that is
Mm.
always changing, and
Ooh.
it's endless. And so there's all these districts. And so Slayer's Almanac is on Kickstarter right now. And it's me and 9 other authors are writing different districts. 10 different districts. And so mine is called the Grave Way. And it's just essentially like wherever somebody is put in the ground, it becomes an entrance to this network. I liken it to a crawl space beneath reality that just kind of like connects everything.
Oh my God.
I'm having a hell of a time writing it because my pitch was like, that was my pitch. And then I was like, I gotta write
Now
something.
I gotta make it. Oh no.
But it's you know, it's inspired by stuff like kill 6 billion demons and like this idea and like Hellraiser and like these ideas that like this idea that like just beyond the liminal space is a whole nother world. Which is something that gets alluded to in the company a little bit, but we don't really go too far into it. Just because I want to see what other people do with it. And because I want to write stuff like Infernal Machines and like
right, yeah,
and Mindjacker and Worm Turner and whatever that is.
Really cool names.
Worm Turner's fun. That one's just about people who are like, it's kind of like Call of Cthulhu, but if the whole goal was to just keep like old gods asleep. And so like it's this like holistic approach to like stopping cults and like keeping old entities from waking up. Just like, yeah, you're like part of this old group that just kind of like goes places and checks on these like, oh yeah, this is where like this creature lives. Let's just make sure it's not going to wake up. Okay,
this ritual stone doesn't look like it's been touched yet. Good.
Turn the worm. It's like it's based off Prince of Darkness. If you've ever seen John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, like that one priest at the beginning, his whole life was spent like making sure nobody found this vat of Satan. Like, what was his life like? What like did people try and come and find it and they just turned it away? Did he have to fight cultists at some point? I'm like, I love taking these ideas and like that other people explore in film and like literature and like just kind of like taking another step, going a little further. The company is a great example of that because it's like, oh, well, what if the company from Jurassic Park like had other weird projects? I mean, and the companies are messing with crap all over the place. Like, Musk is putting these weird tunnels under everywhere and like making people dress up as robots and stuff. That's just the stuff we hear about. I always say, like, yeah, the public billionaires are bad, but you really want to watch out for the ones you've never heard of.
That's it. That's the ticket.
You want to be wary of like the Peter
silent
Thiels
money
of the world, like that are funding all this stuff and being like, yeah, anybody who names like $1 billion company after something from like a Tolkien novel is somebody you want to like keep an eye on. In my opinion, anybody who willingly signs a bunch of contracts with the CIA should have a bunch of flags thrown at them. Earlier, like last year, we saw an ad, like an actual recruitment ad for the CIA on television. Like, there's like the CIA now runs recruitment ads on television, which, if I'm not mistaken, is like illegal internationally. Because I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to recruit for espionage, but that could be me. But it's basically like this. It follows this lady as she's like on a computer, and then she like puts on a scarf and like hands a thumb drive to somebody, and it's like, y'all.
Are we playing James? Is this James Bond?
It's really spooky.
Like, it's very strange. I feel like the same on that similar thread. The same thing about like military recruitment, like ads you see on just YouTube or anything like that, and it makes it like this like Call of Duty kind of grand like thing. And like that's not to say that like people who genuinely serve like don't do it. Some of them do it out of like, you know, actual sense of duty and stuff like that, but
short tradition, a lot of families.
Yeah, but like it feels like it's advertising something that it's not, because I've known a handful of people who have served in various capacities and they're like, well, I mean, it's not like a grand and glorious, it's not what it's shown on these advertisements is really like the gist of what I've heard.
When I was a kid, there was a Marine ad where the Marine climbed a mountain and killed a dragon. Like, he pulled like Excalibur.
There it is.
and killed a dragon. And like I would watch that on Fox, and it would be right next to that Crossfire ad where two kids murder each other in a volcano. And like those would be the ad, and then like a Gushers ad and a Fruit by the Foot ad, and then back to Fresh Prince. And so like, yeah, it's always been like that. I mean, how else are you going to trick people into, how else are you going to trick kids into signing up for the armed forces? Because that's, I mean, my partner and I were talking about that earlier. It's like you get people, the only way to get people to sign up is to either get them while they're young or to pay for their college after they rack up a bunch of debt. Like, that's it. Otherwise, you just, or to have somebody come in career wise from a military family. And usually, if you do that, you end up going to like a military academy where you're educated in military stuff until you become, and you graduate as an officer.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot of people do that anymore.
Right.
Mostly because like they make you pay for that. That's expensive. Like, and like, my cousin is a Marine. My grandfather was in the Army. It's really interesting to see the military to corporate pipeline that happens in this country, and I think elsewhere too. But a lot of military personnel end up going into the private sector, into large, like really prominent positions in companies, which is interesting.
It's interesting.
I say that because I should say telling. It's very telling. Like it's like they're like, you can follow orders. You're not afraid to get your hands dirty. We're gonna have you do X, Y, and Z. That's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's gross, is what it is. That's the word I was working.
It's gross. It's interesting. No, it's not. No, it's just gross.
I have a strong distaste for the American imperialist state, but don't tell my grandparents.
Your secret is my secret. Something I would like to know about you is when did writing enter into your general existence? When did you start to be like, you know what I want to do? I want to write some stuff. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write stuff with the intention of giving it to other people so that they can read it.
Oh, well,
Where did that, and if they're two different times,
that latter portion is recent. I'm in Chicago. I did comedy for a good decade, and like I moved here in 2006 when I graduated from high school to go to film school for directing, like film directing. And then I found out all you need to make a movie is money, so I dropped that school. And then I just stayed here, and I got really into comedy. I started comedy writing and doing stand up and sketch and improv, and I did that for a long time. When 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons came out, I got back into Dungeons and Dragons. I'd been really into 3.5 in high school, which actually was because I got into the Star Wars D20 in like 1999, 2000, like around when episode 1 came out. And then we thought it was board game. And so we all made characters, and then we all sat around the table like, what do we do now? And then it turned out like somebody had to run the game. So that ended up being me. And that's how I started kind of like writing, was in like middle school and high school, like writing these adventures for like Star Wars D20 and then later D&D. And then getting into comedy, like the writing aspect of that. Then I did some storytelling shows, podcasts and shows here in town. And that kind of got me into autobiographical writing, telling stories and like figuring out how to like make those entertaining. Then it just kind of smashed all together. Like as like I started to figure out I could self-publish stuff, I wrote a game called What a Terrible Night. I wrote that in like a fugue over like Labor Day weekend 2018.
We
like
love
just
fugue state games. Those
like,
are some of the coolest.
Yeah, I think I wrote What a Terrible Night in like 4 hours. And then I did the layout the next night, and then I printed it the next night. And then I think I updated some typos, but that's the most it's been changed. Everything but the company, all my games except the company, I wrote like very quickly. And then I stopped thinking about them. They're more like exercises than they are like really fleshed out systems, but they're fun. They're fun toys to play with. Whereas like the company's like a play set,
Yeah.
like that's how I kind of like it. Like those
Mhm.
things, they're fun to tinker around with and you might get a good time out of them. But like the company's like something to like really like invest in and like put
Mhm.
time with.
It's like Lincoln Logs versus like a sand pit
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
far as like complexity, because like you can only do so much with Lincoln Logs because they have a set, rules and stuff. There's You can only do so many things. They only go in so many shapes and spaces. A sandbox though, you could eat that sand if you really wanted
If you
to.
really wanted to, you can do
You
whatever
could
you
put
want.
it in your
Yeah.
face.
That's a really good metaphor. But I think in the terms of like when did I want to start sharing my writing with people, there's two distinct points. Because sharing my writing with people is a huge part of performing.
Right.
Um, and like that's a different process,
Yeah.
especially for stand up. Because it's a very much trial and error process. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is a joke. Let's see if it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then it usually doesn't. And so like you got to figure that out. And then I kind of got into before COVID, I kind of hit a little groove with stand up where I was like, oh, I can tell these little stories and like do my 5, do my 10 and like really feel good about it. And then like I haven't performed in like almost 2 years
Mm-hmm.
because I don't feel comfortable doing it. And
Right.
like, um, and that kind of sucks. I don't like that. Like I
Yeah.
miss it. I miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of that energy went into the books and
Mm-hmm.
like went into that writing, went into that sharing. And a lot of the time I think to myself, I could have written a whole novel at this point. Like I could have written a whole book.
Mm-hmm.
But the joy I get out of watching people tell their own stories with this stuff is more immense than if I had just like shoved a bunch of fiction at somebody,
Yeah.
like and been like, do you get it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I still want to do that.
Yeah.
And I still have some stuff that I think would be better as prose than it would be as a game. But with this, I think it was too nebulous to like pin down. And I love the different ways people take it because everyone has an experience
Yeah.
with capitalism and with
Mm-hmm.
being either a consumer, because we're all consumers,
Mm-hmm.
or being a worker, a part of the labor force.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody takes their own story into the game.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so you can play a character, but every character you play in that game is going to be tinged with your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I have no frame of reference for what it's like to be a drow. I've never lived underground. I don't know what it's like to have pointy ears. I've never befriended a panther. Like these are not things that have happened to me. But I've worked a shitty job. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked for terrible bosses. Like I know what it's like to be doing something I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like I love role playing games. There are immense escapes that have probably saved my life in multiple occasions, and they've helped me explore parts of myself I didn't know existed. Um, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But there are so few that I can have personal touchstones with, like
Mm-hmm.
experientially.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that like this game was really special to me because I could be like, everybody's got an experience like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of games like that. I can't
Yeah.
think of a lot of games like that because like
Yeah.
we use these games as escapism, which is why I think I don't have a larger audience. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because like
People don't want to be reminded of the stuff that's just like right out of the corner of their eye.
and that's completely understandable. Like
Yeah.
I'm not making anybody play the game. I never want anybody to feel like they have to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of antithetical to play, right? Like
Right.
is an obligation. I never want it to feel like you're doing something you don't want to do. I never want it to
Mm-hmm.
feel like something that is unnatural or uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I think it works. I think the game comes across. I think it accomplishes those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it does it with like a bit of style that I'm into. It's a little clunky here and there, but who cares, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
at the
like
end
you
of the
said,
day,
like
it's a game.
nothing is perfect, and especially like in TTRPG games. Like the big TTRPG companies, they don't make perfect games. they don't do things perfect. So like
They
like
don't. They
you
actually
know,
drop the ball more than indie people.
yeah. I think that is like the one of the double-edged sword things, because you have a lot of eyes on you, so you have a really big reach for these like big companies, but then also you have a lot of eyes scrutinizing you. So when you mess up, then you got a lot of people looking at you.
Yeah, yeah, I
Which
absolutely.
it's that's how it should be,
It
you
absolutely
know?
should be
If
that way.
there's yeah, you should be held accountable, especially as something that is bigger, that is bigger than itself. It
Yeah,
takes people from the outside or even internal people holding this large entity accountable, something that it would be interesting to like to experience or to play within the company game of like, what if we all went rogue? What if we all took down this big C company, and to see where it would go,
yeah.
like
Like I
have
said,
a campaign of that.
there's some cool stuff that some people are working on with the jam that explores that. I'm really excited for that stuff to get released. We have a little Discord that we're I am testing the waters of a Discord right now with the company because, like, again, it's just me, and I'm like horrified by like trying to like mod a Discord. It's been really cool to watch people tinker around with it. I was in the Mothership Discord for a long time. I'm in the Brain Trust Discord, but I lurk. I'm a lurker in Discords.
Hmm.
I'm uncomfortable in large crowds, both physically and apparently virtually. and But it's amazing to watch people. I love watching those communities. Like I just
Hmm.
really like watching them work on stuff and build stuff together, and like
Hmm.
that's really inspiring. And I'm trying it out. I'm pushing out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
And so for the remainder of the jam, the Discord's like semi-private. If you go to the jam page on itch, it's called the company mandatory content jam. If you go there, there's a link to the Discord. You can check it out. You can come in. It's open. I don't care. But we're not going to make it like public until after the jam.
It's nice too that like I mean, right now it's kind of in its like it's it's newborn stage, but like if you get to the point where you're like, I want to like expand this, and being able to add like your own little bit of creativity to it in like the naming conventions and like roles for people and things of that nature, have like a little team that you form of like mods. I will praise mods until the day I no longer
Yeah,
breathe,
absolutely, absolutely.
because they are like the backbone of any space, any online space. They are amazing.
Yeah,
Super good.
absolutely. And a good mod is worth their weight in gold. Like
100%. Also, if
absolutely.
you can, pay your mods.
Oh,
If you
please
can,
pay
please
everybody. I
do.
mean, honestly,
Pay
like one of
everybody if
my
you
one of my
can.
big philosophies is if I can't pay for it, I don't need it. Like, I paid everybody for CRGs up front. I didn't want anybody to have to be relying on Kickstarter funds for money. I paid
Mm-hmm.
out everybody before we launched because,
Yeah.
like, I had well, to be fair, I had extra money left over from the original company books,
Hey, well,
and
see, company's paying for itself at that
I didn't
point.
know what to do with it. I didn't want to pocket it, so I just paid my friends to write stuff.
There you go.
So like the only stretch goal we had on CRGs was if we hit 10K, everybody would get a bonus. And we didn't hit 10K, but like everybody's contracted in for 2% of the gross on that, or 2% of the
Amazing.
net. Oh geez. Woof. Um 2% of the net on that. So like they're gonna constantly get paid
That's
annually off
awesome.
that. They all have residuals. I cut Alex in as a partner and a co-creator because honestly, dude,
I mean,
the
like,
that book wouldn't be the same without that art.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like half of a good book, in my opinion, is the words that go into it, but the other half of it is literally the visuals.
Yeah.
You can have really really good words and it be accidentally overlooked because, the visuals aren't just don't catch people for
I mean,
whatever reason.
like, oh, man, he did this stuff, like just the train, like
Train. It's that
like
exceptionally bold black ink and line work for me. That's what really, that to me, it just is the company. Like there's not really any other. system that I know of, any other books
Oh
that
yeah,
have
like
that kind of
this.
like that kind of stuff. Oh, the shepherdesses. I need
Oh,
to
I
know.
love that spread. I'm
I
really proud of that
need to
spread.
know more.
Um, that's a ship of clones.
I need to know even more. I'm so excited.
We yeah, we like Alex. The art elevates the entire piece,
Yeah, but
and
like, look at these
oh,
aliens.
I love.
The puppeteer, it's terrifying.
You
Absolutely
know
terrifying.
that's a sketch he should sent over, and I was like,
Is
I was
it?
like, I'm gonna like, I told him I was like, I'm gonna use this in the book. Just a heads up. It's like, are you sure? It's a little rough, and I was like, fuck off.
Yes. Yes, but it's good. It's supposed to be rough. There's an alien coming out of that body.
The yeah, the oh, like the it's like a woodcut style almost. Like
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it. I recommend Alex anytime anybody asks me for an artist. I recommend Alex, and he's doing these he's doing a creature for the company every day this month. Like every October he does
What?
monsters, and he pinged me on Basecamp earlier this month and was like, I want to do company monsters. I want to do them all tied into the company. I was like, absolutely, do it, like please. So every day he's doing a company adjacent monster. Amazing collaborator, amazing partner, amazing person, amazing artist, just all around amazing. Can't sing enough praises about Alex Mitchell.
It has been an absolute delight to be able to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more.
Absolutely, I'd love to talk to you some more anytime.
Yeah, 100%. We'll have to collaborate at some point to like, I would love to run a game of the company with you in it. Cause like to
Oh, I
me,
love playing it.
being able to run a game or facilitate a game for the game's creators, like I got the opportunity to facilitate in a game of Alice is Missing with Spencer Stark.
Oh, I
And
love
like
Alice is Missing. What a game.
it's a whole different pressure to like run a game for someone who's made a game, but also it's like it's a good challenge. I
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
it.
I
So we'll have
had
to.
TPK ran a Resident Evil series using the company, and I got to
Oh my
play in the pilot of it, um,
how tasty.
which I was also able to use as a playtest for the executive. Um, and I was like the backdoor antagonist, which ruled.
Incredible.
Uh,
Incredible.
and I died so horribly. So much, and then they did 2 more episodes that were wonderful. I love that group over there. They're doing good stuff.
Yay. Well, if for some reason folks didn't catch it, where can people find you and the things that you do? What would you like to plug?
I
Anything that you
am
would like to
on
plug?
Twitter. Um, Unfortunately, like all the time. Uh, I'm at L__Dean, the long L, uh, L Dean at on Twitter. You can find my games at itch.io/ mega-corp. That's the company that, not the titular company. My publishing company is mega-corp games. And you can find my games there. We have the company, which is our flagship game. We got the conflict resolution guidelines, which is available digitally, physically soon. Um, the council, which is a remote play strategy game that is definitely not the XCOM board game. It's not that, and it's not trying to be at all. So please don't give me any litigation fantasy flight games or for Axis. And then What a Terrible Night's on there too, which is my debut game. It's a survival horror pamphlet that is procedurally generated. You can just go. You don't have to do any prep. It's about a bunch of people being trapped in a weird manor house, and one of their friends just died, and they got to get out.
Oh my god.
And like you choose the monster, you choose the layout of the house, you choose what object. Like it's all, you roll the dice to find out how all of that stuff shakes out. So that's a lot of fun. I really like that game. They're going to be playing that on some streams soon, so keep an eye out for that. Right now, the Kickstarter for Slayer's Almanac is up.
Yes.
It launched yesterday, the 12th. This is the 13th. We're recording this on the 13th, so there's probably plenty of time left on it. I wrote a piece for that. There's also some amazing collaborators. Jay Dragon's on that, who did Wander Home. Others that are escaping me now. That one just kind of sticks in my head because Wander Home's so wonderful. What a nice warm game.
Mhm.
And like I don't write those, but it's nice to see them.
Yeah.
Like someone once asked me like, what do you think about lyric games? And I'm like, I think they're wonderful. Like I think people should be making whatever they want to make. Like
Mhm.
I'm like, well, that's strange. I was like, why? I like art.
Yeah.
Why is it strange that I like it?
It's art.
I make
It's
weird shit,
art.
but like not everybody does. Like
Right.
I make odd, kind of brutal garbage, and like I like grindhouse movies and like
Mhm.
schlocky violence and like weird critiques on popular culture.
Mhm.
That's what I make.
Mhm.
But other people make warm, fuzzy games where your animal friends just hanging out, and that's wonderful. And like I like seeing games where people just like get to flirt with each other. That's a lot of fun. And
Mhm.
like who cares?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
there's enough space for everybody. And
Yes.
like anything you want to make, the point is that you're making it. Honestly, like that's the important thing, is just like if you have something you want to put into the world, you should. And you should, like, as long as that thing is like not hurting anybody and isn't hateful, then it's valid. And
You heard
like
it here.
I'm so glad that people are making this stuff, because like corporations aren't going to make this stuff, not unless you make it.
There you go.
And then
Yep.
they're going to steal it and then like crank out tons of copies of it, and you'll never see a dime.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
until then, keep making
Until then, keep
warm,
making stuff.
fuzzy, fun stuff, because that shit makes me feel good. When stuff like
Mhm.
Wonder Home wins awards, I get excited
Yes.
because it means that like people are paying attention.
Mhm.
When stuff like Alice is Missing wins like best product at the Ennies, like that means people are paying attention to this stuff,
Yep.
and like that's important. That's
Yes.
exciting.
It is. You heard it here first. Make the thing, write the thing. If you have the
It
time,
is
energy,
mandatory.
mental spoons to give to the company TTRPG Game Jam, do so. It goes through the end of October. You got some
Yeah, all
time
month.
left. Check out the stuff that is going to be there. When it, if you don't, that is totally fine. Check out them the company on Twitter. Play the game if you can. Like we said earlier, you don't have to if you don't want to, but like I think you should give it a shot. It's very good. It's easy to learn. It's
I think
easy to
it's
play.
worth a read at least.
At the very least. Well, thank you very much for giving me your time
Thanks
this
for having
lovely
me.
day.
Or you're not talking to me. You're
I'm
talking to them.
talking to you. No,
Okay.
you. They can wait. um,
This
it's
was a
been a
lot of
delight.
fun. I really
This was.
appreciate it. This
Thank
is fun.
you, thank you, and to everyone else who is here listening, partaking of this. Tune in next week, same time, same place, Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, and the video you can catch on YouTube tomorrow, Sunday afternoon time. Until we meet again, friends, please take care of yourselves, and also I hope you enjoy your nightcap. Have a great night.
Bye.